Okay, so once again, welcome everybody to this presentation, the Scholars Day presentation. My name is Mary Fran Rydell, and here we go. And I am nursing faculty. I teach community health nursing to the seniors here at Carlow, and I'm lucky enough to have these two wonderful young women nurses to be presenting today on their scholarly work. We have the first one to be presenting today will be Cali Kiessling. She is currently in my community health class. She is presenting on a topic that's near and dear to her heart that she feels very compelled and to share information about. And it's a proposed study looking at postpartum depression. So if there's anything else you'd like to add, Cali, before you present. Otherwise, you can start.
Yeah, hi everybody. Like Mary Fran said, I'm Callie. I'm a senior nursing student. This presentation and this proposed study was a project that I did last year, my junior year of nursing school, for our research nursing project. And I kind of tailored it up a little bit to present today. So I am also a little bit unfamiliar with sharing my screen on Zoom. Do we know which button I press for that? Oh, screen share. There it is. All righty. All right. Can everyone see that okay?
There we go.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, there you go. See if you can.
There we go.
Okay. Just click on it. There we go.
All righty. So like, again, Mary Fran said, this research study is on nursing education and postpartum depression. So to introduce my topic a little bit, and I was thinking about topics specifically in nursing that hadn't been too far researched and that I was personally very interested in. So I kind of looked at some mental health aspects of nursing, and I came across this. The rate of women who experience postpartum depression within 1 year of giving birth is about 1 in 7, which is about 14% of all women who are bearing children. This phenomenon is discussed as being essentially inevitable. So as nurses, most of the time we are taught to start in the primary intervention area where we are being preventative rather than proactive and treating first. But in the topic of postpartum depression, this study is looking at what would happen if we started there and used preventative methods for counseling options and education for women who are in their immediate postpartum period. And just another statistic that I thought was a bit alarming and to kind of capture some attention of the severity of this issue, the rate of infanticide, which is the murder of an infant by the mother, which within the first year of life is approximately 10% in all women who are suffering from postpartum depression or psychosis. Taking a look at the literature that I used for this topic to kind of delve into it a little bit, upon research, it seems that women often do not seek treatment for postpartum depression because they are unaware of certain risk factors prior to getting pregnant and during pregnancy. And they also, again, like I was discussing, the way that it is kind of viewed as this is what is going to happen when you do experience this rather than what can we do to stop it? They kind of view their declining mental health as normal after having a baby. Additionally, 50 to 80% of mothers experience the baby blues, which is a short-lived transitory condition that includes mood lability, tearfulness, and some mild anxiety and depressive symptoms. Again, because these are so similar to the beginning symptoms of severe to moderate postpartum depression and postpartum psychosis, mothers often do not seek treatment for this because they think that this is just normal and it'll go away. In a study in Southeast Asia, that is similar to this topic I'm proposing, displayed a significant reduction of psychiatric diagnoses in general. So that might include postpartum depression, anxiety, psychosis, in postpartum women who received the primary intervention of a structured education program on risk factors and early signs of postpartum depression. And again, this is considered a public health crisis as 10 to 15% of childbearing women are affected worldwide, which again is why it is so near and dear to my heart, because I feel as though, especially in nursing, we're focused on physical health a lot, which is of course very important. However, mental health is just as important. Discussing the framework for this proposed study, it falls under the theoretical framework of Nola Pender, and she is known for her health promotion model in nursing. The study focuses on the well-being of the participants and steps being taken with evidence-based practice to reduce the incidence of postpartum depression, which, like I said, is currently a public health crisis with 10 to 15% of women affected worldwide. And to sum up all of those things that I just kind of spit out at you guys, the research question summed up is: in postpartum women, does structured education regarding counseling services and signs and symptoms of PPD compared to minimal or no education affect the rate of postpartum depression? And then breaking down the design of what this would look like. It is experimentally designed, and the sample population would be women who are at most 72 hours postpartum. So it could occur anywhere from having the baby to within 72 hours of her during that hospital stay, with a variety of ages and GTPALs, which for those who are unaware, GTPAL is each letter stands for a different category of childbearing in women. So certain ones are about how long the term was, if there were any spontaneous abortions, things like that. So it wouldn't just be one particular, maybe a mother who had one child or two or none, all kinds of variety and ages as well. The sampling method that would be used is random sampling. So random sampling of these postpartum women, all ages, GTPALs, from a particular hospital, one with a postpartum unit. So for example, I decided to go with UPMC Magee Women's Hospital here in Oakland. A potential sample size would be about 25 of these women. And then these are the women that would receive the structured education plan that I will be discussing further. And then the control group would be the same variety of women using the same sampling method, but without receiving the proposed education plan. These participants will receive the already instituted nursing education that many facilities already use. Covering all the procedural bases, IRB, the participants would be educated on everything that will be involved in the study prior to signing any forms or participating in anything. And once they are informed, they will be asked to sign an informed consent form. And any potential identifiers would also be removed from any data collection. So this would be an entirely anonymous study for both the researcher and the participants. Instruments being used, each participant would be given a questionnaire regarding their mental health with open-ended questions within 72 hours of giving birth. So this first time prior to being educated on counseling resources, and then 3 months postpartum after receiving the structured education on the resources. So this is a bit of a quantitative study as well as qualitative. So we have the quantitative with checking the rates of postpartum depression at the end of the study, but we also have this qualitative data with the subjective questionnaires. And then the education on resources would include a structured 3-session educational plan of classes for mothers to attend. So 3 sessions, one at least 72 hours postpartum, then one week postpartum, and then a 3rd session 1 month postpartum. I thought it was important to include, especially with mental health nursing and mental health care in general, potential for error and ethical discussion. So ethics come into play with potential unforeseen changes in the participants' physical and mental health. So, like I said, the control group will be receiving that minimal to no education that is already instituted in the hospital and not this lengthy structured education program. However, it would be against our ethical conduct as nurses and healthcare providers if we recognize that there were participants in the control group who showed signs and symptoms of declining mental health status, signs of severe postpartum depression, psychosis, things of that nature. So if this was recognized, then they would be promptly removed from the study and treated as well. Discussion about this whole thing. Through research, it's been concluded that postpartum depression is a prevalent health issue among OB clients. So like I said, 10 to 15% of women are affected worldwide. This is significant to the role of the nurse by providing thorough and structured education to these clients. Nurses can have a direct role in providing better care for clients and decreasing the rates of postpartum depression. So this is a direct correlation with nursing care. Nurses would play the main role in this by providing this education, which is so important in nursing. And even in school, we are taught that when we're answering questions, when you're prioritizing, the psychosocial aspects of priority come last. And in certain settings, that is true, but I think that mental health is definitely glanced over sometimes in nursing care. So I think that by conducting this study, we could bring something to the table that would really benefit the health of the population. So if the results of the study support the hypothesis, like I explained a little bit a moment ago, nursing education on counseling services for postpartum women could be much more heavily focused on to potentially decrease these rates of postpartum depression. So if the correlation that I had with my hypothesis is correct, and there are declining rates with this structured counseling and education program, things like this could be instituted in hospitals all over the country and all over the world to further decrease those rates of PPD. And just because I never know who I'm speaking to in an audience, I also wanted to include resources that are available. So if any of this sounds familiar to you or anyone that you might know, there are resources available. So these are within Pittsburgh, but there are also worldwide ones and nationwide. So there's Allegheny Health Network, there are UPMC support groups, counseling services, anything like that. So if this stuff sounds familiar to you or someone close to you or you might know, please reach out and please take these resources. Do not take them for granted. They are absolutely available. And these are my references for the research I provided earlier in the presentation. And that is all I have with this proposed research study.
Excellent. Thanks, Callie. Does anyone have any questions or comments for Callie? I see some clapping. Callie, I do have a question for you, if you don't mind. I was wondering, it wouldn't surprise me at all after your graduation that you embark on this study. And I was wondering if, do you see yourself how do you see yourself emerging into that study if this is something you can follow through with? Do you have any plans for that?
Yeah, so I am working in the medical ICU when I graduate. However, I am planning on furthering my education as well. So I know that research is a large part of continuing nursing education. So I think I could definitely explore it and research it once I get to that point in my career.
Perfect. Yeah. When you're doing your master's, there'll be an opportunity to do that for sure. Okay, super. So you have touched on a topic that is obviously, like you said, it's a public health crisis, maybe not been addressed as much as it needs to be. And it's work like yours that you're proposing that's going to possibly begin some changes for some women suffering And so thank you so much for bringing this to our attention.
Yeah, thank you for listening.
Yeah, very well done. Okay. So our next presenter is Kaylee Goblesky. And Kaylee is a Beard Scholarship recipient. Am I saying that correctly? Which is money that is given to awarded to a student to participate in a study abroad experience. And so Kaylee went to Uganda last semester, and she's here today to discuss what that she did in Uganda with several other members of the Carlow community, and how she has tied this into her nursing education. So, thanks, Kaylee. Look forward to hearing what you have to share with us.
I'm gonna grab my laptop so I can pull up my notes because it's not pulling up on this computer, and then I'll just share the PowerPoint. I'll be 1 second.
Okay.
Okay, are you able to see the PowerPoint?
Yes, yes, we are.
Perfect. So as Mrs. Rydell mentioned, I ended up going to Uganda with a group of faculty from Carlow as well as a photographer through the Rosemary Beard Scholarship. So I received funding to do a study abroad program. So kind of the backstory of how the heck I ended up in Uganda was obviously through that scholarship, but mostly through Dr. Susan O'Rourke, who invited me to travel with them. So a group of Carlow faculty began working in Uganda many years ago in 2013. And over the past 9 years, they have accomplished training of teachers, developing curriculum for schools in need there, as well as community outreach, which mainly focuses on clean water, sanitation, and healthcare there. So in December of 2021, so just a few months ago, I traveled with, again, 4 faculty, Dr. Susan O'Rourke, Dr. Deb Mitchum, Dr. Amy Zellers, and Kevin Spencer, and then a photographer named Marini, and we went to do 11 days of work there. So I'm just going to kind of go through a very brief overview of what we did. It was a lot, and it's a lot to pack into a short presentation. So just as a kind of brief overview, and then if you have any questions at the end, I can go into more detail about certain aspects of the trip. But day one, we did community eyeglass distribution, and we visited a small business owned by the woman in the top right photo. Her name is Harriet. She owns a small business and employs mothers of children with disabilities. So this eyeglass distribution, I had no idea what I was getting into. There were people lined up, a lot of people, to the point where we did not even have enough glasses or time to get to all of them, and we brought a ton with us. And for the most part, like as you can see in that bottom left picture, they weren't even real prescription glasses. They were just reading glasses that they really needed to be able just to do daily activities, especially for women who work in Harriet's shop, who are doing things like sewing and just need a little bit of extra help to be able to do their jobs. So communication barriers were a little bit difficult with this. So we used a kind of picture chart versus the traditional chart that you would see here with the alphabet, so that they could, so that we could point to a picture on one chart and they could point to it on another chart, and then we would be able to assess how their vision was, which was very interesting to see a different way that we can assess something. And so in this top right picture there, you see Harriet receiving a wedding dress. So her small business will rent and sell those to women in the community as well. And then in the top left, The woman is actually hand making a dress. They measured me and made the dress in like the 2 hours that we were there, which was really cool. So moving on to day 2, we visited the Prime Tower School with James and Rachel, who are kind of in charge of that all. In the top left picture, James is in the white shirt and Rachel is in the front in the brown shirt. They are definitely community leaders. They have a ton of involvement in their community, even just beyond this school. We'll see them come up throughout some of the other days of travel. While we were there, we also discussed plans for a maternity clinic for this upcoming summer when they travel back to Uganda again. And then we also discussed some of the needs of the Prime Tower School, which included drilling of a well there so that they would have clean access to water since they are a boarding and day school. So day 3 was probably one of the most impactful days for me. We spent some time, again, with James and Rachel, identifying communities that would benefit from drilling a clean water well. So you can see in the top left picture is a water hole where they collect clean water from. So that is about the cleanest that their water gets. They use the jerry cans, the yellow things that you see in the pictures, to collect water, and the women will spend legitimately all day walking back and forth from the water holes to where they live to get clean water for, everything, bathing, cooking, laundry, all of that. So they can walk miles. One woman said there are days where she'll make 10 trips back and forth to the watering holes just so that they can do the basic things that we really take for granted. In the photo on the right, you see her using a cup. This is so that they don't disturb the algae that's in the bottom of the watering hole and can get the cleanest water possible. And then a continuation of day 3. We did have a lot of fun while we were there too. So we went to James and Rachel's home and they cooked us lunch. You can see Rachel cooking in the kitchen on the top right, and then the meal that they prepared on the bottom left. And the photos on the top left and bottom right are when we went into another community to check on wells that Carlow had facilitated drilling there already. So we just checked on them, made sure that the wells were still working as they should, that they didn't need any repair, and just checking on the community as a whole to see if there was anything else that could be done there to help them. Moving on to day 4, this was kind of a more relaxed day for us, kind of a travel day. We went to Sippy Falls area and we went on a coffee tour and went hiking, which was super cool. So the coffee tour took us through the entire process of making coffee, and they do this all by hand, which was kind of insane to see. It took a very long time just to make a small pot of coffee, and that obviously doesn't include the time that it takes for all of this to actually grow. So they took us through that, which was really interesting to see. And I don't understand how coffee is so cheap compared to how long it takes them to process all of this. And then we went hiking, and you can kind of see the waterfall in the background. It's just a very beautiful natural area there. And in the top right, there are bodas. They're like one of the main ways of transportation there. There's more bodas than there are like actual vehicles for sure, especially in the cities. So moving on to our 5th day there, we spent the day in Okot. So we did a few different things here. One of those is mattress and blanket distribution, which I'll talk a little bit more about on the next slide. Meeting with a parent group in the community. And then we also talked about plans for a clinic here in this community. So the photos that say always use gender neutral language and the leave no one behind was very surprising for us to walk into this community and see this. Uganda is a very, very male dominated country. And it was just very nice to see a community that was so progressive in treating everyone equally. This community in particular did have a large population of people with disabilities. So it was very inclusive and it was really nice to see. And they really are championing to kind of take care of the people in their community, which is how the clinic came up. So The bottom right is kind of what we walked into, and everyone was just waiting for us to come and talk to them and like, what the heck were we going to come in and do? So Carlow's goal is really to support this community in developing their own clinic, not coming in and building something and saying, here you go, because that's not sustainable. So what you see on the top left is what will be used as a visiting room for nurses to come in and do like checkups and give vaccinations and all of those kinds of things. And then, so on this slide here on the top left, they are already planning to build a like large, legitimate kind of clinic building versus that little hut that they have. So they have been working on making bricks for this, which was a really cool process for them to explain to us. While we were there, they also made us a meal. Food is interesting there because as much as they kind of struggle with having the things that they need, they're always like preparing you a meal and saying you eat. So it was a little bit awkward because everyone was just kind of sitting there staring at us, watching us eat this meal that they prepared. And it's just like you wanted to go and hand them a plate, but it's just not the right thing to do in that situation, which was a little bit difficult. But bottom left is just us chatting about plans for the maternity clinic. And then on the bottom right is me and a stack of mattresses. This stack of mattresses was taken into this community so that these children with disabilities didn't have to sleep on the floor like they were doing. So these were funded through a bingo that was actually held here at Carlow last semester. So it was very rewarding to be able to see that put into action. Moving on to day 6, we spent the day in sorority doing some shopping. The photos on the top are just kind of a glimpse into what a city in Uganda looks like. And we also spent our first day at the Silver Memorial Inclusive Learning Education Center, which is a mouthful. So for short, it's called SMILE. And basically this is an education center that is focused on providing education for both those with and without disability. So the first day we kind of just hung out, assessed what was going on there. And then on day 7 of our trip, we came back to SMILE. And so our goals for SMILE while we were there were basically to get things done. So get these classrooms to a point where they could be used. All of the photos on the top and then the one on the bottom left are pictures of what the school looks like and kind of in the building stages still. And this is something that has taken years to build. It's not like it just went up in a few months. So they did it very slowly. They built the walls and they added the roof, and now they're putting the windows in and doing the floors. So it's just something that's progressively happened during Carlow's trips to Uganda. And then on the bottom right, that's Dr. Amy Zellers in the black shirt. We were able to purchase some lumber while we were in the city, which was an experience in itself. It's not like going to Home Depot and just picking things out. Like, they hand cut everything and the measurements aren't right. And so you kind of just have to rig everything together. But that's just a bench that we were able to build while we were there. And Dr. Zellers took the initiative to teach the people in the community there how to do this so that they were able to get materials and do this themselves so that they would have desks for their classrooms. So again, focusing on how can the community support themselves and be sustainable without us being there. So on day 8, this was our last day at SMILE. You can kind of see on the top right how the classrooms were continuing. They were doing the flooring and all that. And that was pretty much finished by the time we left. There's just no photos of it. And then on the top left, you can see we ended up building a storage box that day as well. So again, teaching them how they could build things to use in the classroom. And they can lock like educational materials in there so that way they stay in good condition. And then we went and saw James and Rachel again. So with that day with James and Rachel, we went and met a family who was in need of support to be able to go to school at the Prime Tower School. So the big issue with this family was that the mother had passed away, and the goal was for them to keep their only daughter in school. because if she wasn't in school, basically she would be taking over the maternal role in the family. They did have like a nanny of sorts that stayed with them and did help to take care of them, which also facilitated her staying in school. But we went and visited them, and we did end up finding someone to pay for her to be able to go to Prime Tower School for the next year. So that was a success, but it was nice to just get to know a family that lived there. So then day 9 was just a lot of travel. We had kind of worked our way pretty far away from where we started. So then that day was just traveling back to Entebbe where we started. And this took forever. I will never complain about traffic in Pittsburgh again. I've never seen anything like what it was like traveling here. The bodas were like everywhere. You really couldn't get through. Just pretty insane traffic. But these are just, again, some more pictures of what it kind of looked like here, like in the cities. Day 10 was another day that had a really big impact on me personally. We met Victoria, who actually has an honorary degree from Carlow for her work with orphans and vulnerable children. And so she took us to Noah's Ark School for Disabled Children, which is where all these photographs are from. So this school basically just provides care and education for children with disabilities. And you can kind of see in the pictures, it's really not up to the standard that we would hope for children with disabilities. And it's very hard for me to swallow that had these children had more access to resources, they really could have thrived. Whereas here they're more surviving than thriving. On the bottom right, you can see like they'll just lay the kids outside on mats, the ones who are unable to walk, and just hang out there with them. But yeah, we had a lot of fun there too. The kids were so sweet and so excited for someone to be there and come visit them. And then that day we also went to the Kennedy School, which is like a high school basically, to discuss students from the Kennedy School taking courses like high school and college classes through Carlow, and then potentially coming to Carlow eventually to study here with us. So that was an interesting conversation with them. And then they'll also be collaborating with the Kennedy School for the GAP program in the fall. And then day 11 was our last full day there. So we visited an island on Lake Victoria. So Victoria, who I mentioned on the last slide, she was in charge of Bright Kids Uganda, which took care of about 100 children. And so when the pandemic hit, she took all of those children out of the mainland and took them to an island that her family owned on Lake Victoria to try to keep them away from everything that was going on, especially since some of them had disabilities and that put them at a higher risk. So on the left, top left, you can see those are the boats we took across Lake Victoria. Definitely not what I was expecting, but it was a super cool experience. It took about an hour and a half to get from the mainland to the island, and then an hour and a half back. While we were there, we met George, who is pictured on the top right. He does have a disability. I want to say it's cystic fibrosis, but I'm not 100% sure. But Susan met George years ago and has taken a special interest in him. So his story kind of is he, for his safety, is confined to a chair most of the time because they just don't have the staff to take care of him. So they do that for his safety. And then just a few times a day, like he'll be taken out of the chair to eat or to play for a little bit. So going off of what I said about the orphanage for disabled children, it's hard to see that if they had more care and more accessibility to the things that they needed, that George would probably be thriving. And we could tell that he was just so smart. We would show him videos on our phones of like people that were in our group, and he would point and like he knew like this is who was in this picture. So it was just heartbreaking to see that he didn't have the opportunity to really get better, but he was a sweet, sweet little boy. And then while we were there, we also got to see a little kindergarten graduation ceremony, which are the photographs on the bottom. So that was pretty much what we did during our trip. I just wanted to really extend a thank you to everyone that I traveled with, especially to Dr. Susan O'Rourke, who invited me on this journey, to Marini, who captured this trip through some incredible photography. All of those photographs were from her. And then to everyone else, Dr. Amy Zellers, Dr. Deb Mitchum, and Kevin Spencer, for being so willing to invite a student on the trip with them and to really sharing their knowledge and experiences with me. And then if anybody has any questions, I would be more than happy to answer them.
Kaylee, I have a couple of questions. If anybody else, I was wondering, okay, this is sort of just an observation of one of the pictures. Did Dr. Zellers jump off of a waterfall?
Yeah, I did, Kevin did, and Amy did. Yeah.
You all did?
Yeah. Susan wouldn't.
Okay, I would not have done that
You
either.
know.
Look at that.
Yeah, it wasn't as high as it looked, but it was still kind of scary.
Okay, yeah, I'll bet. Oh my goodness. Do you think that you will, how has this experience sort of contributed to your career as a nurse moving forward? Or, do you see yourself taking any initiatives or how has it informed anything that you might see in your career moving forward?
I think I honestly have a completely different perspective of healthcare here. Just seeing, like, obviously we can make a lot of improvements, but just seeing like the resources that we do have here and like realizing that like we can really put this to use to make people's lives better here. And not only here, like figuring out how to extend that to communities like the ones that we visited, to help improve their lives there. But it's just like overall, I just feel very privileged and blessed, and like it really sparked a passion in me for being able to go out and help people, whether I end up back in Uganda or wherever. But
right, you could take the experiences that you had there and transfer into any different community here in the States or anywhere when there's a need. And I love the whole approach was basically supporting them so that they could build their own and take care of their own needs, not your care, so you're empowering, helping them to provide independence and feel proud of, and it gives longevity, right? Like you said.
Yeah, we discussed a lot about white people going in and being expected to hand things to people, not only there, but just everywhere as a whole, just this idea of saviorism and how that's not what we're trying to do. We're trying to create sustainability in these communities so that they know how to do things for themselves and that this can continue on for years after Carlow is there.
Right. So that term saviorism or toxic service we've heard, and we really have to be careful about that because it's not about us coming in as heroes or saviors, but it's about being in solidarity with folks that have different needs and challenges. And it seems like you benefited maybe even more than they did from your experience there.
That might be true.
Yeah. Super. Does anybody else have any? I see Dr. Rehers had joined the crowd. Any questions from anybody else? Well, we applaud your work and your presentation. Really, it was very interesting. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
And thank you, Cali, for sharing your research proposal that will certainly be beneficial to so many women moving forward. You both did a super job. I could not be more proud. And you are going to be terrific nurses. We're lucky. The world's lucky to have you. So thanks so much for sharing your
Thank you.
work with us. And thank you, everybody, for coming. and listening to these scholars. I see silent claps. I'm giving a loud clap.